Hello, all, and welcome into another edition of What's the Word. Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2020, and the word comes from James 4:17 out of the Amplified Version. So any person who knows what is right to do but does not do it, to him it is sin. I have a lot I want to talk about today, but I want to start off with some social action programs started by D.C. athletes. First off, John Wall, point guard for the Washington Wizards, launched the 202 Assist program, which provides rent assistance to DC's underprivileged Ward 8. Also, Braden Hope, goaltender for the Washington Capitals, along with his wife Brandy, launched their Get Off the Bench for Racial Equality auction. The auction benefits Black Lives Matter in DC and the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Braden and Brandy donated $5,000 to each cause, and if you find it in your heart to get involved with either of these programs, I'll put the link in the video description. This isn't the first time that Brandy and Braden have advocated for a group of people. Over their time in Washington, they've shown a history of supporting the LGBTQ community in DC. I need to slow down. But what I really want to talk about this episode focuses around a letter written by Mystics guard Natasha Cloud. Natasha is a black athlete, and she penned a letter to the Players Tribune titled, "Your silence is a knee on my neck." In the past, Natasha has taken a stand on gun safety, so this isn't her first time advocating either. What I want to do in this episode is highlight the athletes in the DC area that have taken a stand. After several players on their own volition for the Washington Capitals released statements, the team as a whole released a joint video on social media that should play now.
It's up to all of us
to listen,
to acknowledge,
to learn,
to speak up,
to act.
It's up to all of us to listen and hear the voices and stories of those whose basic human rights have been denied.
It is up to all of us to acknowledge the ongoing suffering and oppression of the Black community.
It is up to all of us to learn and try to understand the history of oppression the Black population has faced.
It's up to all of us to speak up and raise our voices against the systemic racism that has plagued our country for centuries.
It is up to all of us to act and to work diligently towards a culture shift, including within hockey.
It is up to all of us to work together to achieve equality for all.
It's up to all of us to come together with one voice and a united purpose.
We will stand against inequality with our actions.
Together, we are louder.
Together, we are stronger.
Together, we're united for change.
After you take a look at that, I want to implore you to pause the video and check out some of these screenshots and read them. Speaking in a video conference on NBC Sports Washington, Braden Hope said, "I don't think this is a time to sugarcoat anything. I think it's a time to look at ourselves in the mirror and really find how we can be better and how we can take responsibility for the past and learn from that to move forward." Wrapping up the Capitals news, the team entered phase 2 of the NHL's return to play plan as team facilities open for voluntary activities limited to 6 players at a time. That is happening today. Another team in the DC area getting back to action, DC United returned to voluntary small group training at Audi Field on June 4th. But on June 8th, the organization, along with its supporters and club partner, DC Scores, came together to paint the acronym for Black Lives Matter, as well as the words "I can't breathe" on their pitch. More news coming out of the MLS as the league finally announced the details of its return to play plan entitled MLS is Back, the Tournament. Out of this came a pretty interesting quote that I want to read for you. Josh D'Armo, the chairman of Disney Parks Experiences and Products, said, "Sports have the power to unify and inspire, particularly during challenging times." I think that's particularly true, especially with the advocacy and the speaking out of players, owners, and personnel in all leagues. They definitely have a powerful voice, so I want to implore them to speak on it more. But getting back to details on the MLS's plan, it will include all 26 clubs taking place at the ESPN's Wide World of Sports complex at Walt Disney World in Florida. They'll have a portion which will count towards the regular season. That'll be group play, which will take place in 6 groups. 3 being in the Eastern Conference and 3 in the Western Conference. 5 of these groups will consist of 4 teams, while Group A will be the only group consisting of 6 teams. There is a live draw for the group stage happening today at 3:30, so there'll be more on that as that comes. Following the group stage will be the knockout stage, which will take 16 teams, the top 2 from each group, plus the 4 best third-place finishers, with the winner of the tournament clinching a spot in the 2021 Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League. Some key dates for the MLS's Back tournament. Teams will begin arriving June 24th, with the group stage beginning on July 11th. That'll take them through July 25th through 28th, which will be the round of 16, with the quarterfinals being July 30th through August 1st. The semifinals will take place on July 5th through 6th, with the tournament final taking place on August 11th. The last point of this plan is something that kind of left me a little bit confused, so I'll find out more about that and get back to you. But the MLS, upon completion of the tournament, plans to continue its regular season with revised schedules in each team's home market. This will then be followed by the MLS Cup playoffs and the 25th MLS Cup. The schedule is still being developed, so that will be released at a later date. But following in suit with soccer, the U.S. Soccer Federation's Board of Directors voted to repeal its policy from 2017 requiring National League players to stand during the national anthem. In a statement, they said, "It has become clear that the policy was wrong and detracted from the important message of Black Lives Matter." The policy was first put into place in 2016 when national team midfielder Megan Rapinoe knelt in solidarity during a women's national friendly against Thailand. Moving on to baseball, while owners and players still have negotiation issues, the MLB held the first round of its truncated 5-round draft. The draft, which is normally 40 rounds, got underway last night, June 10th. The Baltimore Orioles held the number 2 selection, and with that pick, they selected Arkansas outfielder Heston Kjerstad, who's a left-handed power-hitting corner outfielder. The pick came as a surprise to many, as most experts had third baseman Austin Martin out of Vanderbilt as the second best player in the draft. Many see this underslot pick as a way of the Orioles trying to go after more higher profile picks later in the draft. So going along with that draft strategy, the Orioles selected Mississippi State shortstop Jordan Westburg with the 30th pick, which was the first selection in the competitive balance round. The Orioles have 3 picks remaining. And since I'm becoming tongue-twisted and long-winded, I'm going to take a sip of water. Defending World Series champions Washington Nationals selected Oklahoma right-handed pitcher Cade Cavalli with the number 22 overall pick. This marks the 4th straight year that the Nats have selected a starting pitcher in the first round. Cavalli is seen as a high upside pick who's still developing as a pitcher, as he came into college playing first base. The Nats will have 5 picks remaining, including a compensatory pick that they gained for Anthony Rendon's departure. Rounds 2 through 5 of the draft will take place today at 5 p.m. Moving on to the UFC. On Tuesday, June 9th, UFC President Dana White announced that the UFC finally has a place for Fight Island. Fight Island will take place on Yas Island off the coast of Abu Dhabi. It is an artificial island, but the UFC will have 10 square miles blocked off just for them, with private training, hotel, and food facilities, as well as an octagon on the beach. Part of this announcement was UFC 251 taking place on July 11th with 3 championship bouts headlining. The first one being welterweight champion Kamaru Usman taking on Gilbert Burns. A lot was said about this by not only fans but also UFC fighters, as not too many people are pleased with not too many people wanted to see Gilbert Burns in this fight. Jorge Masvidal was expected to be the challenger for this title, but obviously his dispute with UFC sees him being replaced. Usman next wanted Conor McGregor to fight, but obviously he retired. So Gilbert Burns gets the fight. As I said earlier, players took exception to this, with Nate Diaz being one who was outspoken, going on Twitter saying, "This is what's wrong with people claiming they're fighters, settling for less because they know they're not worth expletive. You should have fought the next guy in line, not the guy who would take less because he's told to. That's why no one will remember you guys. This isn't a title fight." So as I was saying in my last episode, the UFC really is losing traction and losing excitement, and this is the reason why. Not paying your stars and getting guys like Gilbert Burns to headline a title fight. But Usman took to Twitter himself to defend his teammate, who's also his next opponent, saying Burns is a true martial artist and not all talk. The next headlining fights are featherweight champion Alex Volkanovski taking on Max Holloway for a rematch of the title, and Peter Yan taking on Jose Aldo for the vacant bantamweight title. The announcement also came with 3 other dates, July 15th, 18th, and 25th, which will serve as UFC Fight Night cards. Dana White, the president of the UFC, also announced the Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic Part 3 will take place on August 15th. Cormier announced that he will retire following the fight, saying that he won't be goaded into fighting again after this. He also went on to say that he loves the game, but he's loving doing commentary. In some pretty cool news, I will preface this by saying I don't watch NASCAR much. Back in my younger days, I'll say like 8 or 9, I did watch a few races, but found out that there wasn't much diversity in it and lost my interest. But NASCAR announced the ban of all Confederate flags after Bubba Wallace, the organization's only full-time black driver, called for change. In a press release, NASCAR stated that the presence of the Confederate flag at NASCAR events runs contrary to our commitment to providing a welcoming and inclusive environment for all fans, our competitors, and our industry. The announcement comes after former chairman Brian France was met with backlash in 2015 when he initially called for the banning of Confederate flags. France called the flag offensive and divisive. He also offered a program where fans could exchange Confederate flags for American flags, but that didn't take hold. I'm actually glad to see this now. This is another instance of athletes everywhere using their voice to enact change. So I'm really glad to see this. I'm not sure how much this will actually make me want to watch NASCAR. I am a fan of Joe Gibbs Racing, as Joe Gibbs was obviously the head coach of the Washington Redskins. So when I am paying attention, that is the racing team that I support. But I will also support Bubba Wallace going forward. I wanted to wrap this up with a statement by Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban about conversations on race. He said, "It's hard to discuss race when you're white. The reality is, to be brutally honest, when people talk about white privilege, we get defensive. We all have this mechanism that I call manufactured equivalency to try to protect ourselves. We'll say, I have a lot of black friends. We'll say, I grew up in a mixed community, so I'm not like that. I can't possibly be someone who takes advantage of white privilege." He also went on to say, "It's incumbent on us to stop doing that, because that doesn't move us forward when we do that. That's part of having a courageous conversation." So in closing, I want to thank everybody, particularly DC athletes, for standing up for a cause. Not only obviously the white athletes, but black athletes in DC and everybody who's using this time in the world to affect change. For Carl McManus, this has been another episode of What's the Word? God bless.